The use of a white handkerchief as a spiritual weapon and mantle is a practice rooted in various religious and cultural traditions. This seemingly simple piece of cloth holds profound symbolic and practical significance in spiritual warfare, healing, and divine connection. In the Bible, the Apostle Paul is noted for using handkerchiefs and aprons to perform miracles. Acts 19 verses 11 to 12 states, "God did extraordinary miracles through Paul, so that even handkerchiefs and aprons that had touched him were taken to the sick, and their illnesses were cured, and the evil spirits left them." This passage highlights the belief in the transference of divine power through physical objects. Acts 19 verses 11 to 12. This passage is one of the most significant biblical references to the use of handkerchiefs in spiritual practices. It states, "God did extraordinary miracles through Paul, so that even handkerchiefs and aprons that had touched him were taken to the sick, and their illnesses were cured, and the evil spirits left them." This highlights the belief that objects can carry divine power and be used for healing and exorcism. Elijah and Elisha in 2 Kings 2 verse 13 to 14. Elisha picks up Elijah's mantle after Elijah is taken up to heaven. Elisha then uses the mantle to part the Jordan River, demonstrating that the mantle carried Elijah's prophetic power. This story underscores the concept of a mantle as a symbol of spiritual authority and power. The hem of Jesus' garment. In Matthew 9 verses 20 to 22, a woman who had been suffering from bleeding for 12 years touched the hem of Jesus' garment and was healed. This incident illustrates the belief in the transference of divine power through physical contact with a holy person's clothing. In the early Christian church, relics and objects associated with saints were often believed to carry miraculous powers. Handkerchiefs and other cloth items that had touched the bodies or graves of saints were considered especially potent. This practice was rooted in the belief that the holiness of the saints could be transferred to physical objects. During these periods, the use of relics and holy objects became even more widespread. Pilgrims would often bring back handkerchiefs and other items that had touched holy sites or relics, believing these objects could provide protection and healing. Today, the use of handkerchiefs as spiritual tools continues in various Christian denominations, particularly in Pentecostal and charismatic movements. These handkerchiefs are often prayed over and anointed with oil, then used in healing services and personal devotions. White is traditionally associated with purity and holiness in many cultures. Using a white handkerchief in spiritual practices symbolizes a desire for spiritual purity and a connection with the divine. Waving a white handkerchief can symbolize surrender and peace, both in a physical and spiritual sense. It represents a surrender to God's will and a plea for divine intervention. The act of using a handkerchief in prayer or healing is a tangible expression of faith. It serves as a physical reminder of one's devotion and reliance on God's power. The use of a white handkerchief as a spiritual weapon and mantle is deeply rooted in biblical tradition and historical practices. It symbolizes purity, faith, and divine power, offering believers a tangible way to engage in spiritual warfare and seek God's presence. Now let's dive deeply into the spiritual uses of the white handkerchief. 1. Healing. In Christian traditions, a white handkerchief can be prayed over and anointed with oil, then used to touch or cover the sick. This act is believed to invoke divine healing and protection, drawing on the biblical precedent set by Paul. The concept of using a handkerchief for healing is rooted in the Bible, particularly in the New Testament. Acts 19 verses 11 to 12 describes how God performed extraordinary miracles through the Apostle Paul. God did extraordinary miracles through Paul, so that even handkerchiefs and aprons that had touched him were taken to the sick, and their illnesses were cured, and the evil spirits left them. This passage illustrates the belief that physical objects can carry divine power and be used as instruments of healing. The white handkerchief serves as a tangible symbol of faith. When used in prayer for healing, it represents the believer's trust in God's power to heal. The act of holding or placing the handkerchief on the sick person is a physical manifestation of faith, which can strengthen the believer's spiritual connection and focus their prayers. The color white symbolizes purity and holiness. Using a white handkerchief in healing rituals signifies a desire for spiritual and physical cleansing. It represents the purity of God's healing power and the believer's hope for a pure and healthy body. Practical steps for using a white handkerchief in healing. 1. Consecration. Begin by praying over the handkerchief, asking for God's blessing and anointing. You might say a prayer like, "Lord, I ask that you bless this handkerchief. May it carry your healing power and bring comfort and restoration to those who use it." If you have anointing oil, you can anoint the handkerchief by placing a small amount of oil on it while praying for God's healing presence. 2. Application. Personal use. When praying for your own healing, hold the handkerchief in your hands or place it on the area of your body that needs healing. Pray earnestly, asking God for His healing touch. Praying for others. When praying for someone else's healing, you can place the handkerchief on the person or have them hold it while you pray. This act can help focus both your faith and theirs on God's healing power. 3. Faith and expectation. Belief in God's power. Remember that the power lies not in the handkerchief itself, but in God's ability to heal. The handkerchief is a tool to help you focus your faith and prayers. Expectation of healing. Approach the practice with an expectation that God will move. Faith and expectation are crucial components of spiritual healing. Many believers have shared testimonies of healing through the use of consecrated handkerchiefs. These stories often highlight the importance of faith and the belief that God can work through physical objects to bring about healing. While individual experiences may vary, the common thread is a deep trust in God's power and a willingness to use tangible symbols to express that faith. Using a white handkerchief for healing is a practice deeply rooted in biblical tradition and symbolic of faith, purity, and divine power. By consecrating the handkerchief, using it in prayer, and maintaining a strong belief in God's ability to heal, believers can incorporate this practice into their spiritual lives as a powerful tool for seeking physical and spiritual restoration. 2. Protection. The handkerchief can be carried as a talisman to ward off evil spirits and negative energies. It serves as a physical reminder of God's presence and protection in one's life. The white handkerchief symbolizes purity and holiness, representing God's protective power. Carrying or using it in spiritual practices is a way to invoke divine protection against negative forces and evil spirits. Having a white handkerchief with you serves as a constant physical reminder of God's presence and protection. It can help reinforce your faith and confidence in God's ability to shield you from harm. Practical steps for using a white handkerchief for protection. Prayer. Begin by praying over the handkerchief, asking for God's blessing and protection. You might say a prayer like, "Lord, I ask that you bless this handkerchief. May it be a symbol of your protection and a shield against all harm and evil." If you have anointing oil, you can anoint the handkerchief by placing a small amount of oil on it while praying for God's protective presence. Keep the handkerchief with you throughout the day, in your pocket, bag, or even under your pillow at night. This act symbolizes carrying God's protection with you wherever you go. Bring the handkerchief with you during times when you feel particularly vulnerable or in need of extra protection, such as during travel, important meetings, or challenging situations. Hold the handkerchief while praying for protection. You can pray specific prayers for safety, asking God to shield you from harm and negative influences. Incorporate the handkerchief into spiritual rituals designed for protection. For example, you can wave it in the air while praying for God's protective presence to surround you and your loved ones. Remember that the power lies not in the handkerchief itself, but in God's ability to protect. The handkerchief is a tool to help you focus your faith and prayers. Approach the practice with trust and confidence that God will protect you. Faith and trust are crucial components of spiritual protection. Many believers have also shared testimonies of experiencing protection through the use of consecrated handkerchiefs. These stories often highlight the importance of faith and the belief that God can work through physical objects to provide protection. While individual experiences may vary, the common thread is a deep trust in God's power and a willingness to use tangible symbols to express that faith. Using a white handkerchief for protection is a practice deeply rooted in symbolic faith and the belief in divine power. By consecrating the handkerchief, carrying it with you, and using it in prayer and rituals, you can incorporate this practice into your spiritual life as a powerful tool for seeking God's protection. 3. Cleansing. During spiritual rituals, the white handkerchief can be used to wipe away symbolic impurities, representing the cleansing of the soul. This practice is common in various religious traditions, including Christianity and Islam. For connection with the divine, waving or holding a white handkerchief during worship can symbolize surrender and devotion to God. It acts as a silent prayer, expressing one's faith and reliance on divine intervention. The white handkerchief symbolizes purity and cleanliness. In spiritual practices, it represents the cleansing of the soul from impurities, sins, and negative energies. The white handkerchief symbolizes purity and cleanliness. In spiritual practices, it represents the cleansing of the soul from impurities, sins, and negative energies. Using a white handkerchief in cleansing rituals can help believers feel spiritually refreshed and renewed. It acts as a physical representation of the inner cleansing process. Thanks for watching. May God bless you.